Kate from the Literary Apothecary, and I have something really exciting to share with you guys today. Today we're going to talk about the Joan Didion Readalong that I'm hosting with my very best friend Evie. She was only Evie. It'll be on my Discord, and I am so excited to talk about this. We're going to start this in November for Nonfiction November, and it's going to be so much fun. So we're going to be using this collected nonfiction of Joan Didion's essays. We tell ourselves stories in order to live, which is my favorite title ever. It's such a fantastic title. So one thing to know about this read along, we're going to start at the beginning of this collection and work our way through to the end, and we're just going to do one essay a month. It's a very slow, very easy, very fun read along. Starting in November on my Discord, we'll have separate channels set up for this. Thing to know about this book, this is her collected nonfiction up through 2006. Most of her nonfiction, a lot of it is journalistic essays. I'm going to talk in a minute about her writing and why it's different than other writing, but all of these are essays that can be found elsewhere, and all of these have been already published in separate books. And so I will, in just a minute, talk about each one of the individual books, and we'll have them set up on my Discord, so you can jump in and out of the read-along if you want, if you don't want to read all of the essays. So like I said, we're going to read one essay a month, starting from the first essay and going back in this collection. We'll announce what essay we read each month in my videos, and I'll have it on the Discord, so if you want to join along. Now let me introduce you to Joan Didion, because a lot of people don't know Joan Didion, but I first met her writing when I was in grad school getting my MFA in creative writing, and I absolutely fell in love with it. It fueled my thesis, it drove me to write the way that I write, and I just love Joan Didion and her writing. So Joan Didion is, like I said, my favorite nonfiction writer, but she writes much more than just nonfiction. She's an essayist, a journalist, a memoirist, a novelist, and a playwright. She began her writing career in the 1960s when she won an essay contest by Vogue magazine. And one of the things that I love most about her writing is that no matter what decade she's writing in or about, she captures the spirit of that moment perfectly. And she's fearless in her writing. She does not shy away from anything, any topic. You can see society's values change just by tracking her writing through the years. Her writing in the 1960s and 70s engaged audiences in the realities of the counterculture of the 60s and the Hollywood lifestyle. In 1964, she fell in love with her friend and fellow writer, John Gregory Dunn. He helped edit her first novel, River Run, but was also a prolific writer on his own. In the 80s, her writing tackled issues of the Cold War, Vietnam War, and the Cuban Missile Crisis. In 1991, she wrote the earliest mainstream media article suggesting that the prosecutor for the famous Central Park 5 trials used racial profiling and that the accused were actually innocent. Her writing in the 90s took a more personal and introspective turn. She began working on play and movie scripts with her husband, including an adaptation of her own novel, Play It As It Lays, and the blockbuster film Up Close and Personal. In the 2000s, her writing reflected the hardest decade in her life when she lost her husband and her daughter, Quintana, was suffering from a major illness. In 2004, we got her first memoir, The Year of Magical Thinking, which was then adapted to a one-woman Broadway play with Vanessa Redgrave, and I highly recommend reading that memoir if you want to read more Joan Didion after this. In 2011, we got another memoir titled Blue Nights, which tackles aging, adoption, and the loss of a child. Her daughter died right before The Year of Magical Thinking was published. Just this year, in 2021, we finally got another book from Didion, another collection of essays that were written between 1968 and 2000. So in the introduction to We Tell Ourselves Stories in Order to Live, I pulled out 2 quotes about Joan Didion and her writing that I felt really captured her writing in the perfect words. She seemed sometimes so sensitive that whole decades hurt her feelings, and the prose on the page suggested Valerie's shiverings of an effaced leaf, as if her next trick might be evaporation. And all these years, she has been rehearsing death. Her whole career has been a disenchantment from which pages fall like brilliant autumn leaves on stones. So now I'm going to talk about each one of the individual books that makes up this collection, so you get an idea of what each books are about and you know where you want to come in and out of this read-along. So the first book that we're going to read from is titled Slouching Towards Bethlehem, and this title is from a poem by William Butler Yeats, which was titled The Second Coming. This was Joan Didion's first nonfiction work, and it was first published in 1968. It focuses on American icons like John Wayne and Howard Hughes, growing up a girl in California, the essence of San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury, and the heart of the counterculture. And one of the things that is different about Joan Didion's writing compared to others of her time is that she always put herself in her essays. In interviews, she said, "I thought it was important always for the reader, for me to place myself in the piece, so that the reader knew where I was. The reader knew who was talking." And her writing blurred that line between journalism and personal essays at the time, and really set the precedence for journalism going forward, to be able to bring in the writer into their writing more, instead of just reporting on the person, place, thing, event, whatever they're reporting on. It made journalism much more personal, and she was one of the first to do that. And Slouching Towards Bethlehem is the essential portrait of America, particularly in California in the 1960s. The next book in this collection is titled The White Album, which you might recognize from the Beatles album title. This was first published in 1979, and so we kind of get a book almost every decade. And this deals with the upheavals and aftermath of the 60s and early 70s, and it includes essays on Charles Manson, the Black Panthers, and the shopping mall, the birth of the shopping mall. Joan Didion helped define mass culture as we understand it today, and it deals with California culture, and this is where we get our collection title from. The line, "We Tell Ourselves Stories in Order to Live," comes from this collection of essays, The White Album. Next up we have Salvador, which deals with El Salvador in 1982, and it has the anatomy of El Salvador's terror, its mechanisms, rationales, and intimate return to the U.S. foreign policy. Didion gives us a book that is germane to any country in which bloodshed has become a standard tool of politics. And if I remember correctly, this was the only book that was a full-length essay in this collection. Every other book has essays within the book, within the collection. Next up we have Miami, which was published in 1987. We get Fidel Castro, secret armies to overthrow Castro, murder, drugs, and racial discontent, Third World Capital, Cold War, Bay of Pigs, and the Reagan Doctrine, and Kennedy assassination, plus Watergate. Miami is not just a portrait of a city, but a masterly study of immigration and exile, passion, hypocrisy, and political violence. Next up we have After Henry, which was published in 1992 and titled for a dear friend and editor of Joan Didion's, who passed away at that time. This covers from Washington to Los Angeles. We have TV producers, huge manors, to racial battlefields of the New York criminal courts, mythical narratives that elude others, Nancy Reagan and Patty Hearst, and the 1988 presidential campaign. Lots of fame and fortune in this. And then next up we have a collection titled The Political Fictions, which was published in 2002, so now we're into the 2000s. And this, through the deconstruction of the sound bites and photo ops of 3 presidential campaigns, 1 presidential impeachment, and an unforgettable sex scandal, Didion reveals the mechanics of American politics. And then the last collection that is included in this collected nonfiction work, We Tell Ourselves Stories in Order to Live, is titled Where I Was From, and this was originally published in 2003 and explores California's romances with land and water, its unacknowledged debts to railroads, aerospace, and big government, the disjunction between its code of individualism and its fetish for prisons. So those are the individual books that make up this collected work, and I thought a fun way to kick off this readathon would be to create a tag for it. So this is my Joan Didion tag. I took each one of these works that I just talked about and created prompts that I felt like captured those particular books. So Slouching Towards Bethlehem. Name a book that captures America in a particular time. And for me, this one is The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. This captures the Great Depression in America in 1929 and 30, and I feel like it just captures that moment so well. The White Album. Name a book that captures the culture of California. And this one, I believe, is the only book that I haven't read myself yet, and that is The Big Sleep by Raymond Chandler, and it's a mix between the utopia that people seek and the dystopia that they find in LA, and just the description felt like it captured that California lifestyle so well. Salvador. Name a wartime book. For me, this is one of my favorite historical fiction books, All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. It's a Pulitzer winner, and Anthony Doerr is such a wonderful guy. I met him in grad school, and he was so wonderful. And he writes both fiction and nonfiction, and his writing is just so impactful. This is a World War II historical fiction book, and I highly, highly, highly recommend it if you haven't picked it up yet. Next up, we have Miami. Name a book that delves into dark topics masterfully. And this, for me, is just about any Toni Morrison book, but The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, she deals with racism and racist people and the impacts of that on others, especially kids, so well. You can't help but be moved by reading this, and it just deals with those dark topics so well and makes you see it in real life. After Henry. Name a book that spotlights fame and glamour, and for me, this is none other than The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. That's all that The Great Gatsby is about, is that perception of being wealthy and famous and glamorous, and I couldn't not name it here. Political fictions. Name a book with a political scandal. And for me, this one is My Dear Hamilton, which is a novel of Eliza Schuyler Hamilton by Stephanie Dray and Laura Kamoe. This is a historical fiction book based off of our known Hamilton, one of the founding fathers, his wife, and all that she went through in the founding of America and what she had to deal with being married to John Hamilton. And then last up, we have Where I Was From. Name a book that sets a close relationship with its setting or environment. And for me, this book is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. This book, you have the magic that deals with the earth and the ground and everything, the environment around it. So I couldn't not name it for here, because without that magic relies on the environment around it. And then we have tags and friends. So here I tag Benedict at Gregory LaPerche because he's all about fact books, and Joan Didion writes facts. I also tag Ariel at a couple books because she was really intrigued when I was talking about this to her before, and Chrissy at Chrissy Lou Storsevsky in Space because I love Chrissy and I can't wait to hear her answers. So this was our announcement video about our Joan Didion read-along, a little bit about my love letter kind of to Joan Didion and my Joan Didion tag. If you saw this tag and you're interested to do it, consider yourself tagged. If you're interested in joining our read-along starting in November, come and join my Discord. The link will be in the description below. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you loved most about this video. I was so excited to do this that I just went all in on it. I'm sorry if it was so long, but I was just so excited for it, I couldn't help myself. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you get notified every time we have new videos coming out. As always, my Patreon and my Discord information will be in the description below. Come join the Patreon if you want. It's only $1 a month, and we have a ton of fun there. Keep reading, and I love you all to the moon and back.